with Brad Biggs.
Biggs time.
Biggsy.
His name is Brad Biggs. Brad Biggs talks football with you.
Good morning. Welcome into the Mully Haugh Show. I'm Mark Grody along with Dan Wiederer as we fill in for the fellas. Guests brought to you by, including Brad Biggs, Atturo, your all-weather tire, Atturo.com. Big Z, what's going on?
Morning, Brad.
Morning, boys. What's going on?
Well, you're the man with the plan. You're the man with the story, Brad Biggs. And I think the story yesterday was, oh, my God, the NFC North is so good, and they're all peaking at the right time, except for the Bears, who didn't do their part in the division. Minnesota beat Green Bay 27-25. Minnesota and Detroit on Sunday night for all the marbles, leaving the Bears-Packers game at noon Sunday at Lambeau. What have you thought about this division this year and some of the games that happened yesterday, Biggsy?
Yeah, well, I mean, just specifically that Vikings-Packer game yesterday, it was entertaining. The Packers couldn't kind of overcome the slow start there and make it all the way back in that ball game. But it's wild that you could potentially have a 14-win team end up as the number 5 seed in the playoffs. Like that's just really wild. And when they make their playoff formats and they adjust them, there's always going to be these kind of unique situations that can pop up from time to time, and they don't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. But that could be the case here this season.
Brad, I'm going to give you a little bit of a test here. And the Bears, as you know, are going to be embarking on a very, very critical coaching search very soon here. As you sort of put yourself in the chair of the leaders at Hallis Hall, as you embark on this search, what are the things that you would be prioritizing when you are seeking the best possible candidate for this job in this current situation?
Well, I think it's got to be someone who can really do it all. You've got to listen. Their culture's broken. They've bragged about it for quite a while, and fortunately, they haven't bragged about it recently because their culture flag's in tatters. I think they actually took it off the flagpole. So they've got to fix that. They've got to fix the offense. Like, there's a lot that needs to be done, and you can come up with these little we've heard leader of men and culture changer. I don't know that you walk into this with one sort of guy in mind where, well, if we can get somebody that's as close to this as possible, we're going to be cooking. I think you've got to be open-minded in the search, but not so open-minded that you're talking to 10 candidates. Like, if you're talking to double-digit candidates, I question whether or not they took advantage of their time. Matt Eberflus was fired 31 days ago to do research on people. I question that they know indeed what they're looking for. So, we'll see. The rubber's going to hit the road here pretty soon. It'll be Black Monday a week from today.
So you're coming up on a quarter century on the beat, which is crazy, and it gives you a level of institutional knowledge that is unrivaled in this town. When you go back to the 9-season run of Lovie Smith, what do you believe that Lovie did as a leader that resonated with that particular group and that could be replicated, going forward with someone that the Bears need to take over the current situation?
I think Lovie did a fantastic job of earning the respect of the players and demanding the respect of the players and holding them accountable. But at the same time, I think they viewed him as a player's coach. And that's a really fine line to walk, right? Where you're gonna be real demanding, hold these guys accountable, but they're gonna feel like, hey, this guy's got my back at all times. And that with kind of what they instilled on defense at that time with the younger roster, it all came together. Ultimately, that thing was undone by his inability to put together an offensive coaching staff and for them to get a quarterback. And so I think you know, as the years have gone on, people have been like, well, it's unbelievable that they fired this guy after this record. Well, if you looked at what they were doing offensively and how they were just rolling through offensive coaches and none of it was really working, it wasn't shocking in the present time.
Yeah, a lot of people forget that, and I remember feeling that exactly, that the time was up. Lovie Smith's legacy has aged well, though. I think Jerry
Absolutely.
Angelo. Yeah, I mean, like seriously, because it's just been a complete fail since, right, Biggs? I mean, I guess you got a little something out of Nagy, but that's about it, right?
What are you measuring it against, right? And yeah, the Jerry Angelo, like, look at his record.
Yeah,
his record looks terrific compared to most of what they've done since, and obviously he got the longest runway, but yeah, it's going to be interesting. We'll see what shakes out.
Yeah, well, and that brings me to the current general manager, and I'm in a bad place, I'll admit, Biggs, because I'm kind of middling on Ryan Poles. Well, it feels like everybody else has made up their mind that it's time to move on from Ryan Poles, and I just the approval rating was so high for him at the beginning of the season. If I'm making a case to keep Ryan Poles, Biggsy, what are we pointing to? What are you pointing to as his biggest successes that he should still be here? Like, here's why Ryan Poles should still be with the Bears.
Well, I think internally the way he's structured some of the things and with some of the people he's brought into the building, they've got some good people. They've got some young talent on this. There's more talent on this roster than the record shows. You know, there's so much bad football going on in the National Football League right now. When you look at the number of teams that have 3 or 4 wins, like, it's astonishing. You're looking at a quarter of the league is playing a particularly bad brand of football. I think when you stack the Bears roster up against those teams, like, they don't belong. And I think some people had unrealistic expectations for what was going to happen when they fired Matt Eberflus, and those didn't come true. So I think there's more talent than people currently think on the roster. There's certainly better talent than the record would show. And I just go back to that Kevin Warren press conference. He came out and offered very strong support. He said he wanted to make it very clear before he took any questions. That was in his 8-minute opening statement, his monologue, right? So that wasn't a reply to a question. Does that change in 5 games with an interim head coach, with your new defensive coordinator, because Eberflus was the play caller on defense? Anything's possible, but that would be a pretty sharp detour from what Kevin Warren laid out in his own words.
Brad, building off that, you know as well as I do that when you reach out to people around the league to get their perception of this opening and what the Bears need to do to put themselves on a path for success, that Ryan's contract situation is part of that conversation, that there are people that have reservations about either marrying up with a general manager who's on unsteady ground, or B, marrying up with a general manager who would be in line to get a contract extension from a team president without necessarily having justifiable reason to give him a contract extension. So how do you sort through that if you're the Bears trying to figure out the best path to hiring the best coach when you have this very complicating factor with the general manager?
Yeah, I think if they find the right coach and the right coach believes that this is the situation for them, I don't think it's going to be complicated. Like, if they feel like they're all on board, like if it aligns, right? And I'm talking about a 2-way street here, right? I'm talking about from the top down to the bottom up, right? If they feel like, hey, this I can work with this guy. If they run into a situation like that, if that's what they can find, I don't think it's a complicating factor. you work it out then.
But what if it is? What if you have a candidate that you really, really like and they say, I don't know
then
about
you got to
this.
make a move. Then you got to make a move. I mean, this isn't like, I don't think it's, rocket science. Like Kevin clearly has the juice. He wants the juice. He wants to be out in front on stuff routinely at House Hall. He wants to be a face of the franchise, and that's fine. So if he the coach that he ultimately sees as the guy that they've got to have, if he wants to pull the trigger on the GM, I'm sure George McCaskey would allow him to do that. But I think their hope is that they find something that where everybody's sort of aligned, and then it works itself out pretty easily, I would believe.
If Poles does stay, Bigsy, how much of the core of this roster do you think changes?
I mean, well, what kind of defensive scheme are they going to run? Like, I mean, you got a lot of.
I'll make it more specific. How about offensive line? Like, how many guys are returning on the offensive line?
You need at least 3 new starters on the offensive line. Okay. You might need 4. That's really easy to figure out. Like Darnell Wright's going to stay, and then maybe your left tackle's on the roster. Guard to guards probably got to completely turn over.
Yeah,
some of the guys currently on the roster could be depth or competition, but they need upgrades.
Yeah, you don't think Tevin's back? Tevin's not back next year. You mentioned the guard.
Why would you re-sign Tevin Jenkins?
Right. Well, because when he plays, he's good. But I get the point. Like he's injured, right?
I don't mean it. Yeah, like he doesn't finish games.
Yeah.
You go find me an offensive lineman in the last 15 years that has a play history like his that is just games not finished all over the place. That guy, like I had one guy compare him to Mark Colombo, and look, Colombo went on to have a great career with the Dallas Cowboys, and Colombo went on to former Bears first-round draft pick, had a really nice maybe 5-6 year run in Dallas. Well, the Bears had given up on him because he had a just terrible knee injury, a lot of damage in the knee, and it took a long time for him to work his way back, and he got to Dallas, and they did the right things, and sure enough, he got back up and running. Like with Tevin, it isn't one bad injury; it's that he's constantly dealing with something. He's been on the injury report with 5 different injuries this season.
So Brad, with what we know about the offensive line, all of us are in agreement that they need a total overhaul up front. We know what they've got available in cap space. We know the draft resources they have. How all in are you going, if you're the general manager of this football team, to fix that offensive line in one offseason in 2025? How do you go about doing that at such a critical stage for the development of your young quarterback?
Well, you put together your puzzle pieces through free agency and then the draft. Obviously, you'd consider all avenues. You'd consider a trade or any other form of player acquisition, but most likely you're talking about starting in free agency and then going to the draft. And it's a bit of a puzzle piece. You've got to have a pretty good idea of what's going to be available in the draft and what you like in the draft as you enter free agency, right? So you have a clue of if we get this here, we can probably get that over there. This is going to be doable. They've got some extra draft capital. They're looking at 3 draft picks in the top 41, 42, something like that right now. 4 draft picks in the top about 75. A lot of cap space, although I don't think it's a great year for free agency. And Kansas City Chiefs guard Trey Smith, he's not going to hit the open market. People, I keep seeing that. You've got a better chance of getting a pony for Christmas next year. So, we'll have to see. But, yeah, they know this has got to be done. And you'll see a boatload of new faces on the offensive line next
One
year.
of these years, by the way, I'm going to get you a pony for Christmas, just so that you can up that probability.
I like that. I'll go in with you on that one. Yeah. Look, we could talk about the defensive line too, but I actually want to, now that as we're talking about, injuries with Tevin Jenkins and the dependability factor, it sparked a thought on Jaquan Brisker. And I know Brisker is still going to be in year 4, I think, next year of his rookie deal, so he's still obviously under contract with the Bears. What's going on with Brisker? I assume he's not going to play against Green Bay, and he's lost all these games due to concussion. What do you think the future is of Jaquan Brisker with the Bears, Bigsy? Any idea?
Well, hopefully the concussion thing, hopefully he's fine from that here real soon. And even if he was fine from the concussion thing 10 days ago, there wasn't enough time to get him back on the field. Like, he hasn't practiced football since the first week of October. So if he wasn't going to be able to be in this situation where he's on the practice field in really probably the beginning of December, it wasn't going to happen, because there was going to be a ramp-up period that was going to be required to get him in football game playing shape after he gets back from the concussion. So it's possible the concussion stuff's cleared up now, and they just realized that there simply isn't time to get him on the field. What would the point be? We all know he's had 3 concussions in 3 seasons. I think you got to be real careful and smart about that, and hope that he's in a position where he can be healthy and pursue his career next season.
All right, Brad, new coach comes in late next month, perhaps early February, gets his office settled and starts to get to work on a plan for Caleb Williams in 2025. What are you advising for the young quarterback to work on in year 2 that absolutely needs to show improvement for them to reach the heights that they need to go to?
They got to be better at everything in terms of quarterback play. They've got to be, talking about huddle management at the line of scrimmage, pre-snap. Hopefully with the new offensive line, he'll feel more comfortable being able to read things more crisply. I think you're just looking for him to elevate his game across the board. Certainly, they've got to be more accurate throwing the football down the field. They've been very poor across the board. You name the target, whatever. That has not been nearly as good as it needs to be. So they've got a lot of stuff to work on, but I certainly wouldn't say you show up in spring and you just start working on deep ball accuracy. He's got to get better at a bunch of stuff, but he's shown some really good things this year. I like the makeup of him, right? The ability to handle the adversity this season with, I think, what outwardly has been a really good attitude, that kind of attitude that shows that this guy can be a leader moving forward. I think, the idea of like rookie quarterbacks and first-year quarterbacks, second-year quarterbacks being like true team leaders is a little overblown. But the way he's carried himself this year has been really impressive. He's going to have to be better, and you would imagine that chances are they lean toward an offensive head coach to try to develop him to his fullest and bring all of those talents to the surface.
It would make sense. This segment with Brad Biggs is being sponsored by Estwing Professional Tools, made in the USA for 100 years, estwing.com, and by Busey Bank, building business, growing wealth since 1868. Do you think that Caleb Williams's promise and makeup and even raw skills, or based on what he did this year, is more promising than, say, the first year of Justin Fields or even the 2018 season for somebody like Mitch Trubisky? Because that essentially 2018 was his first full year with the Bears. Do you feel something more with this quarterback than his previous predecessors?
Better than Fields? Do you remember what Fields was like as a rookie?
Yeah,
it was
pretty bad. It was pretty awful. It was not very promising, but there's been a lot of bad moments for Caleb Williams. I just need to hear it, Brad. That's all.
Yeah, no, he's got more promise than both of those guys had. Trubisky played a good deal in 2017.
Yeah, but they didn't let him throw it. They barely let him throw it in 2017.
Yeah, well, I think I know there's more upside for Caleb, and you've seen a bunch of these other rookie quarterbacks have impressive moments with more consistency in year one. I think Caleb can catch up to some of those other guys in the class, but he's got to be better. He's got to be coached better, and they've got to be better around him.
You had a good analysis recently about where this dispiriting season ranks among the dispiriting seasons that you've covered, and unfortunately you've seen more than a few. How do you sort of put that into context for the audience about what distinguishes this year from other years that have gone off the rails?
Yeah, I had some intense thoughts after the game Thursday night, just ranking the worst losing streaks that I've seen anyway of 6 consecutive games or more, which there's been 4 of them. And, it's not like best to worst. It's more like, worst to it was really bad, but it wasn't horrible. And I think that the losing streak they had in 2002, when they were coming off a 13-3 season, it was, and they had started the year 2-0, guys.
Oh, yeah.
They'd started the year 2-0, and then they had jumped out to a big lead on the Saints down in Champaign in week 3.
Yep.
And it looked like they were headed to 3-0, and they ended up losing that game. They dropped 8 in a row. Now, it was certainly difficult to play on the road every week that season as they were doing a really poor job of rebuilding Soldier Field. But like that, the expectations for that season were shaped off of stuff they had actually done on the field, and they had a young, talented roster. They had sent 5 guys to the Pro Bowl the year before. So that one is more – that's actually worse than what they've gone through this year, in my opinion, because – this year it was kind of you thought they could compete, especially you expected them to be able to compete, but that was a 13-3 football team that went out there and just laid an egg, and then injuries piled up in 2002. So, fortunately that 2002 season predated some of the social media stuff that we all see now, and then of course for a lot of people. Either the best thing going or the worst thing going is what's happening right now because of recency bias. But I'm not saying this current losing streak hasn't been really atrocious, but that 2002 thing really stuck out just because they that was a damn good football team the year before. Damn good.
No doubt. Big Z, great stuff as always. Thanks for jumping on with us. And I know that Mully Haugh will be looking forward to talking to you and reuniting with you soon, my friend.